Are you absolutely furious with Drake London right now? Did you draft him in the second or third round, expecting a bona fide WR1, only to be met with a frustrating string of mediocre performances and a looming shoulder injury? It's enough to make any fantasy football manager pull their hair out. We were promised a breakout, a connection with Michael Penix Jr. that would light up the scoreboard. Instead, we're left scratching our heads, wondering if it's time to cut bait. What in the world are we supposed to do with Drake London in fantasy football? 3 weeks into the NFL season, and the fantasy landscape is already a minefield of disappointment and opportunity. Whether you're staring down in 0-3 record, desperately searching for a spark, or you're cruising at 3-0, looking to exploit the desperation of others, there's enough data to start having serious conversations about making moves. Injuries have decimated rosters, and surprisingly slow starts from some notable stars have left many managers scrambling. Fantasy football trades are notoriously difficult to pull off, often requiring patience and strategic maneuvering. But as we head into Week 4, it's crunch time to evaluate key players. And today, our focus is squarely on the Atlanta Falcons wide receiver, Drake London. Let's talk about London's fantasy value, or rather, the lack of it so far in 2025. After a successful 2024 campaign, London was widely projected to be one of fantasy football's elite receivers this season. He finished last year as WR6 and was being drafted as high as WR10 this season. The optimism was palpable, fueled by the expectation that former first-round pick Michael Penix Jr. would take over as the Falcons' full-time starting quarterback. And for good reason. In Penix's 3 starts at the end of last year, London was an absolute target hog, averaging a staggering 13.0 targets, 7.3 receptions, and 117.3 yards per game, even adding 2 touchdowns to his tally. We saw flashes of that usage in Week 1 against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. London racked up 15 targets, but the production just wasn't there, ending the game with a modest 8 receptions for 55 yards. To add insult to injury, in the waning moments of the fourth quarter, Penix seemingly found his primary target in the end zone for what appeared to be a game-winning touchdown. But a review showed London lost possession. Instead of a monster 20.9-point performance, he ended up with a far more pedestrian 13.5 points. And to make matters worse, he sustained a shoulder injury on that very play, sidelining him for the final drive. Since then, he's managed 3 catches for 49 yards in Week 2 and 5 catches for 55 yards in Week 3. He still hasn't found the end zone in 2025, averaging a disappointing 10.6 fantasy points per game. So, the burning question, should you trade Drake London? He hasn't been the most disappointing fantasy receiver this season, but he's certainly fallen far short of expectations. Part of this can be attributed to his shoulder injury, which undoubtedly hampered him. But a significant portion also falls on Penix's struggles. The second-year quarterback is completing just 58.6% of his passes, with 71.3 passer rating that ranks him 28th in the NFL. When your quarterback is struggling this much, it's incredibly difficult for even talented receivers to produce consistently. There are still reasons to believe London could turn things around. His current usage is actually quite similar to his slow start in 2024. Last year, he averaged 7.8 targets, 5.0 receptions, and 50.0 yard per game over his first 4 contests. This season, through 3 weeks, he's averaging 9.0 targets, 5.3 receptions, and 53.0 yards per game, practically identical production. London famously overcame his slow start last year, exploding for 80 receptions, 1,070 yards, and 7 touchdowns on 127 targets over his final 13 games. The talent is clearly there. However, the problem with betting on a London breakout is that you're essentially betting on a rapid turnaround from Penix. Even with high usage, Penix's continued struggles will severely limit London's floor and ceiling. Most fantasy managers drafted London in the second or third round, and he simply hasn't produced at that level. As a result, many teams with London on their roster are likely struggling. The Falcons also have a Week 5 bye, which makes trading him after Week 4 even trickier, as it restricts your pool of potential suitors to contenders who can afford to buy low and sacrifice short-term production. So, While London has a favorable matchup against the Commanders this week, a team ranking 25th against opposing fantasy receivers, now might be the opportune moment to start exploring trade possibilities. You're looking for a manager in a panic, someone who just lost a key player to injury, or a contender who can afford to stash London for a potential second-half surge. What kind of trade package could Drake London realistically fetch? It depends entirely on your roster needs and who else you have. But perhaps the best strategy is to target teams that have just suffered a significant injury to a star receiver, like CD Lamb or Mike Evans. Those managers might be in full-blown panic mode, especially after a devastating Sunday loss, and a stable, albeit currently underperforming, option like London might be enough to pry away a solid running back. Players like Bucky Irving or Karen Williams could be reasonable targets, assuming you have enough receiver depth to make that move. Alternatively, you could aim for a higher upside running back like Amarian Hampton or Kenneth Walker III, and then bundle London with another piece to acquire a more consistent WR2 or flex-level receiver to balance your roster. In an ideal scenario, London alone could potentially net you an RB2 and a WR2, a package similar to DeAndre Swift and DK Metcalf, or Jalen Warren and Ladd McConkey. The key is to find value, even if it means selling low on a player who still has considerable upside. So what's your move, fantasy managers? Are you holding on to Drake London, hoping for a Penix turnaround and a repeat of his 2024 second-half surge? Or are you actively shopping him, trying to capitalize on a desperate manager's needs? Let me know your trade proposals and strategies in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for all the latest fantasy football insights and Falcons news. Your input is what makes this community thrive.